السلام عليكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى من تبعهم وعمل بعملهم واستنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. All praise and thanks and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our Prophet and Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the wrongs of our deeds. Whoever is guided by Allah will never go astray, and whoever goes astray can only be guided by Allah. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah alone without partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's messenger, prophet, and servant. I remind myself and I remind you to follow the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to apply them to your daily lives. My dear brothers and sisters, today's khutbah stems from a story that I heard about that's very disturbing, but it is authentic. There is a young Muslim refugee here in the United States, not in California, but in another state, who is a refugee of a war. And this young Muslim girl was injured in the war. So because of her injury, she is disfigured. So she has some burns on her face. And what happened was that she enrolled in school, and it's a big school. It has 300, 400, 500 students. And one of the parents of another student in the school filed a complaint. And the complaint was that the children of that parent were suffering psychological distress because of the Muslim refugee and the fact that they have to see her disability and disfigurement. The sad reality is that the people who filed the complaints were Muslims. All of the non-Muslims in the school did not file a complaint. And in fact, their children became good friends with the young Muslim girl. Things became so stressful for this young Muslim girl from her fellow Muslim classmate that her parents decided to move her to a different school. And in that school, nobody complained. She was also the only Muslim in that school. This is indeed an extreme example of selfishness and arrogance. An extreme example of us not caring about someone else. But there are less extreme examples that happen, and all of you know them. You see them in your daily lives. Alhamdulillah, there are amongst Muslims good people, good believers, who still think of the interest of their communities and their families and the Muslim Ummah as a whole. But this disease of selfishness, self-centeredness, and arrogance has truly creeped into the hearts of many Muslims. And it is tragic that has happened, because that's not our faith. That's not what it says in the Quran. That's not how the Prophet ﷺ lived his life. Nor is it the way that many Muslims over many generations lived their life. So I want to share with you today some thoughts about this, because we need to reflect on our own mind. Where do we stand on the scale of selfishness? Where do we stand on the scale of arrogance? Because sometimes it creeps to our heart and we don't even think about it. It becomes the way we act. It becomes natural to us. We don't even, it's not that we're on purpose becoming selfish or arrogant. It's just become the norm. And that's how we live. And that's how we act. Especially when we live in a world where materialism and selfishness is a virtue. That's the truth. That's the kind of world we live in. And I'm not talking just about the United States or the Western world. I'm talking about the entire world, including the Muslim world. That has become the norm. That's become a virtue. If you don't care about other people and only care about yourself, that means you're successful. That means you're doing a good job. That means you're working hard for yourself or for your immediate family. But that's not the Islamic virtue. That's not how Muslims behave over centuries. This kind of behavior is a departure from the norms of Islam and from the virtues of Islam. The simplest example is that Islam encourages us to spend our money for the sake of Allah, for the benefit of others who may not have what we have, or may be going through a difficult time in their life financially. They may be poor, they may be hungry, they may be whatever it may be. They may be victims of circumstance, of war, of displacement, of whatever it may be, of illness. Allah tells us in the Quran, وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ يُخْلِفُهُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. And whatever you spend, we will replace it. So it's very simple formula. You spend it, Allah will replace it. And He is the best of providers. So not only will He replace it, but He'll give you better. Because He says, not only will we replace it, but He is the best of providers, which means He's going to give you more, not necessarily in quantity, but also in quality than what you have spent. And that's just an example. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu tells us of a beautiful hadith. It's a story that happened during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A man entered the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This man was traveling from another place. He was not from Medina. And he came to learn about Islam. He was a Muslim, but he didn't know anything. He wanted to learn how to pray and how to read Quran and so forth. So he came to the Prophet ﷺ to learn, but this man was extremely poor. When Rasulullah ﷺ looked at him, he had old clothes that were worn out. He looked thin and hungry. He looked poor. His hair was messed up. And Rasulullah ﷺ felt sad for this man. He came and traveled on foot for a long distance to come and learn about Islam. So Rasulullah ﷺ sent someone to Aisha, al-Mu'mineen radiallahu anha, his wife, asking if she had any food. Because he felt like he wanted to invite this man to have dinner in his house. So al-Mu'mineen Aisha, this is another amazing story on itself, but al-Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu anha, she sent back a message saying the only thing we have is water. The house of Rasulullah ﷺ only has water, there's no food. That day, they didn't have anything. So Rasulullah ﷺ didn't really know what to do with this poor man who came to learn. He certainly wasn't going to go back the same day. He was going to stay in Medina that evening. So Rasulullah ﷺ asked some of the Sahaba who were there in the masjid. He said, would anyone be willing to host the guest of Rasulullah ﷺ? This is the guest of Rasulullah. So when you host the guest of Rasulullah, you get tremendous reward. So a man from Al-Ansar are the people of Medina. We don't actually know the name of the man. It's not in the narration. Subhanallah. This man from the Ansar, he said, I will host him. He will come to my house today for dinner. Now that man who volunteered was actually poor himself. So Rasulullah was a little bit surprised. But what can he do? I mean, the man volunteered to host the guest of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so this man quickly rushed home And he told his wife, I am bringing the guests of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to have dinner with us tonight. She said to him, that's great, but we only have enough food for the children. They have young children. We only have enough food for the kids. We don't even have food for you and me. What am I going to feed the guests? So the man told his wife, he said, why don't you prepare that little bit of food and put the kids to sleep early before they even get hungry. Put them to sleep early without any dinner. And when I bring the guests home, you turn off the lamp. They had a lantern, they would put some oil in it. You turn off the lamp, and then you bring out the food. But we won't be able to see it clearly. And I will act like I'm eating. He won't be eating. He's just going to put his hand, but he's not going to eat. And that way our guests, the guests of Rasulullah ﷺ, can have the food. So that's exactly what happened. The man came back in the evening with the guests of Rasulullah ﷺ, and as soon as they arrived, the kids were already asleep. His wife turned off the lamp and put the food out. The Sahabi extended his hand to the dish, acting like he was eating, but he really didn't. He just put his hand out and put it back to his mouth, but there was no food in his hand. The guest felt comfortable that they are having dinner, so he began to eat the little bit of food that was there. And the guest was satisfied and he was no longer hungry. The next morning, this Sahabi went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam smiled. He smiled. And he said to him, لَقَدْ عَجِبَ اللَّهُ مِنْ صَنِيعِكُمْ. Allah was surprised or amazed, is perhaps the better translation, was amazed by what you two, meaning him and his wife, plotted last night. They plotted to feed the guests. And Allah revealed Quran on your behalf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. And those who before them had settled in the land had accepted the faith. They loved those who came to them, and they found no hesitation in their hearts in helping them. They gave them priority over themselves. They preferred the guests of Rasulullah ﷺ to their own selves, even though they themselves are in need. Referring to the Sahabi, he himself is in need, yet he preferred the guests of Rasulullah to himself. And then Allah gives us a lesson. And whoever is protected from his own greed is those who are indeed successful. The successful is not the one who has millions. The successful is the one who can protect himself from his own greed. It's a difficult thing to achieve. It's not easy. Greed is a natural human reaction. Allah created us with that feeling of wanting wealth and money and acquisitions and properties and whatever it may be. That's natural for human beings. So to resist that is very difficult. But Allah says, not resist it. He doesn't say don't become wealthy. No. He says just protect yourself from your greed. Don't let that greed dictate how you behave. Yes, you can become wealthy. In fact, every Muslim should try to become wealthy. But don't let it overcome your mind. Don't let it overcome your behavior. No, the other way around. You are to protect yourself from your own greed. That's what Allah is telling us in the Quran. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in a beautiful hadith narrated in Bukhari, he talks about a group of people called the Ash'ariyin. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, which is one of the great Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is from that tribe, the Ash'ariyin. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the Ash'ariyin, this tribe, are from the area of Iraq. If they were low on food, so they didn't have enough food, this is what they did. They all gathered in one place and they brought, each one of them brought whatever food they had in their house, everything, they brought it. And they put it on a sheet. They got a sheet like a bed sheet. They put all the food on that. And they divided it equally. And they divided it equally. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَهُمْ مِنِّي وَأَنَا مِنْهُمْ. They are from me and I am one of them. That's how honorable what they are doing is, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, they are part of me and I am part of them. Even though their tribe is miles and miles away, they have nothing to do with Quraysh. Yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, they're part of me and I am part of them. Because our belonging in Islam is not to the blood family, or to the tribe, or to the city, or to the country. These are things we have made up. We belong to La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. We are brothers. Doesn't matter which country, tribe, whatever. That's all stuff we made up. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us, he said, I am part of them and they are part of me. Even though they're a totally different tribe from a totally different region. Qais ibn Sa'd ibn Ubadah, who's the son of one of the great Sahaba, he was wealthy. He was extremely wealthy. And he was so wealthy that he kind of acted like a bank. People would come to him and take loans. They needed money or whatever. So they would come, he would give them a loan, he would give them a loan. But he was so kind that he never asked people to pay back. So they would write it down and there would be a due date, but he never pestered people and, oh, you owe me and you start paying me back, none of that. He just let people pay when they can. One day, Qais became sick. He was ill and he was in his house and he couldn't leave. But nobody came to visit him. What a great guy. He's helping everyone in his community, and yet when he was sick, nobody came to visit him. Qais was a little surprised by this. So he asked his neighbor. He said, I've been sick for a few days. And I haven't seen any of my brothers. So normally they would come visit me. Why haven't they come to visit? He said, Ya Qais, they have been asking about you. But they are ashamed to come and visit you when they owe you money and they haven't paid it back. They're ashamed. How would they, you feel kind of like you owe the guy money and then, you show up and you're not even ready to pay it and it's due. It's kind of a bad feeling, right? You feel embarrassed. So he said they're embarrassed, they're ashamed. They don't want to come visit you when they owe you money. Qais said, if money is going to separate me from my brothers, tell everyone in the town that Qais has forgiven all loans. Tell everyone that Qais forgave all loans. He doesn't want anyone to pay back anything. It's done. Forgiven. When that news spread in the town, People came to visit Qais. There were so many people that came to visit him that the door to his house broke. That's how many people were opening the door and closing and opening and closing. It broke down. That's the narration of the story. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, one day there was an earthquake in Medina. He was the Khalifa and there was an earthquake. And Umar started to say to himself, this earthquake happened because we have left the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You see, back then it was what? Umar, time of Umar. Imagine where we stand now. We have earthquakes happening all the time and we don't even think about it anymore. So he wanted to do a test. He wanted to see how people behaved. This is an interesting test. He got one of his servants and he said to him, I'm going to give you 400 dinar. Dinar was the money at the time and it was gold. So every dinar was quite a bit. He gave him 400 dinar. He said, take this money and go to the house of Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, one of the great Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Go to the house of Abu Ubaidah and give him the 400 dinar and tell him, this is from Umar. Give me 400 dinar. And then don't leave. Just stick around the house playing with the kids, waste some time, and see what he does with the money. Where does he put it? What does he do with the money? So this young boy took the money, 400 dinar. He went to the house of Abu Ubaidah and he said to him, Umar told me to give this to you. He gave him the money. And the young boy sat around playing with the kids in the house, but watching to see what Abu Ubaidah was going to do with the money. Abu Ubaidah opened the bag of money and he took out 7 dinars, 400. He took out 7. And he told his wife, these 7, you take it to the house at the end of the street and give it to them. They haven't eaten meat for a month. He took out another 6 and he told his daughter, you go down to the other house there and give it to them. He took out 7 and he gave it to his son. And he said, you go and give it to them. And he kept taking out small portions until there was nothing left. All 400 were gone. He distributed right away. I mean, he got it from the kid, he opened it up, and he distributed. And he didn't keep not even 1 dinar for himself. This young boy went back to Umar and relayed to him the story. So Umar gave him another 400. He gave him 400 and he said, take it to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, another great Sahabi, and do the same thing. So the boy went to the house of Mu'adh. Mu'adh, by the way, was very poor himself. Mu'adh was poor. So he gave him the 400 and he hung around the house playing with the kids. And he said, Umar gave you this. Mu'adh did exactly the same thing. He opened the bag, took out 6 dinars, gave it to his daughter, said, go take it to this house. Took out 10, go to this house. Took out 5, go to this house. And he kept distributing until there were only 2. Of the 400, there were only 2 dinars left. He took the 2 out and he told his wife, take them to the house of so-and-so. His wife told him, yeah, we are poorer than they are. I mean, you're sending them 2 dinars. We are in more need than they are. He turned his face and he did not respond to her. She said, Ya Mu'adh, We are in worse shape than these people. He said, no. You do what I'm telling you to do. I don't want them. And he insisted. He turned his face again. The young boy went back to Umar and told him what he saw from both Abu Ubaidah and Mu'adh. And Umar said, Alhamdulillah, we are still all brothers. They all think alike, you see? So we're all brothers. They all did the same thing. We are all still brothers. This earthquake happened, but we're still all brothers. Subhanallah. Umar ibn Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, at a time when Medina was in an economic difficulty, he stopped eating meat. He said, I'm not going to eat meat. And one day, he was standing to pray, starting to pray, and his stomach started to gurgle. He felt and heard his stomach making noises because he hadn't eaten much. Umar looked at his stomach and he said, gurgle, don't gurgle, I don't care. You are not going to taste meat until every child in Medina has been full and satisfied with meat. Only then will I eat meat. He was the Khalifa. He was in charge. But that's what he said. He looked at his stomach and he said, I don't care what noises you make. You are not going to taste meat until every child in Medina has been full of meat. Till then, nothing. These are examples of people who didn't care about themselves, who were not selfish or arrogant, who didn't look down on others because they were poor or disabled or sick or whatever it may be. But they stuck together as one people, as one ummah. And that's what we're missing. That's what we are missing. We have departed from that spirit, that thinking of being one people, one ummah, one family, to being individuals. Individuals. I'm only going to look out for myself. I only want to care about myself. I care about my son. I care about my wife. Other than that, forget it. Even within the same family. I don't care about my brother. That's his problem. My sister, that's her problem. It's not my problem. That's how we have become. And sometimes we may not say the words, but our actions indicate what we are thinking. And Allah knows what we're thinking. Don't think you can hide from Allah. And certainly Allah knows our actions. So be careful. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله ولي الصالحين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Abdullah ibn Ja'far radiyallahu anhu was outside of Mecca and Medina, and he approached a garden that had palm trees in it. So this was a big garden. There were a lot of palm trees. And in that garden, there was a slave. So the owner of the garden had a slave, and the slave had the job of attending to the garden. So he would water the trees and clean up and harvest the dates, whatever. That's his job, was to take care of that garden. So Abdullah walked in to the garden, admiring the beautiful trees. And he saw the young slave, young man. And he didn't really talk to him, he just saw him. And the young man had a little container with food in it that his master had given him. This is your food to eat. It was his lunch. So the young man sat down on the ground to eat his lunch. And while he was doing that, a dog came in to the garden. A stray dog. So the young man, the slave, took a piece of meat and threw it to the dog. And the dog was extremely hungry, so he ate it. Abdullah ibn Ja'far is watching all of this. He hasn't said anything. When the dog ate the first piece of meat, he gave him the second one. Then he gave him the third one. Then he gave him the fourth one. And the dog was looking at him wanting even more. So he showed him the plate. He said, I don't have any more done. So this young man is communicating with the dog. He said, I gave you everything. I don't have anything. And the dog left. And the young slave stood up and went back to his work. Abdullah ibn Ja'far was amazed by this. The young guy didn't have any lunch. I mean, he gave all of his food to the dog. So he went to him and he said, Salaam alaikum, salam. He said, you know, I've just been walking here in the garden and I saw what you did with the dog. Why did you give him all your food? You preferred that dog to yourself. He said, you don't understand. There are no dogs here. So when I saw a dog come into the garden, I knew that that dog came from far away and that he was hungry. Otherwise, why would he come in? We don't see dogs here. That was very unusual. Then when I saw him eat the first piece of meat, I thought, this dog is hungry. So I kept giving him more to make sure that he was full. He said to him, but you lost all your food. What are you going to do the rest of the day? He said, nothing. I'm going to think of myself as fasting. SubhanAllah. You see how I'm thinking? I'm going to think of as if I was fasting. I'm not going to eat anything. Just going to go continue on. Abdullah ibn Ja'far said, he was very wealthy, by the way, Abdullah ibn Ja'far. He said, they say that I am generous. People say in his town that he's generous. He said, this young boy is more generous than I am. He gave away his own food to a dog. He preferred the dog to himself. He looked at the boy and said, who's the owner of this garden? He said, oh, so-and-so, he's in the city. Abdullah ibn Ja'far rushed to the owner and he bought the garden. And he bought the slave. And he liberated the slave. He said, you're free, you're not a slave anymore. And the garden is yours. He gave it to him as a gift. Just like that. The young boy preferred the dog, and look what happened. He got his freedom, and he got a garden full of palm trees. When we start preferring others to ourselves, Allah is watching, and Allah knows, and Allah will reward us. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعاليت لك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أنعمت به وأوليت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم اهدنا لصالح الأعمال لا يهدي لصالحها إلا أنت اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها مردنا اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعلي كلمتي الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين بفضلك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إنك يا ربنا على ما تشاء قدير وبالإجابة جدير. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
أقول لا إله إلا الله. So واعتدلوا وأسلموا وأستغفركم الله. Please straighten the lines and close the gaps. Please make sure your mask is covering your nose and your mouth. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
You guys still saw it? Sorry. You guys still praying? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.